Hey, Rob.
How's it going?
We're good. How about you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for asking.
How you doing through the whole COVID crisis? Are you and yours staying safe?
Yeah, staying safe. Getting a little stir crazy. I was in Houston for 3 months, quarantined down there. Probably left the house less than 10 times in the course of 3 months, but got a lot of work done. I was very productive, but I was homesick, so I got back here, and I don't know. It's just a different kind of stir crazy. You just come into the office, work all day, go home,
Yeah.
do it again.
You're in Baltimore?
Yeah, I'm in Baltimore, Maryland.
Yeah.
Born and raised?
Yes, that's correct.
I'm from Annapolis. So
Are you really?
Yeah.
That's awesome. When did you move?
Early 90s, late 80s. Yeah.
Where'd you go to high school at?
Same areas.
Okay. I went to Brooklyn Park. You probably heard of it. They
We
closed.
wrestled then.
Okay. So
Yeah.
90 was the last year. That was the year I was supposed to graduate, was 90. Became North County after that, but
Cool.
small world. So you moved
Awesome.
out west, huh?
Yeah. I'd had enough of, well, actually the East had enough of me. Second time my college asked me to leave. So thought I'd put a few states as a buffer. But
Right.
Well, Rob, let's dig into why we're here. Let's talk about, can you tell us about your journey that led you to doing what you're doing now with CityFam and the other things that you're teaching? And
Yeah, sure. So I refer to myself as a reformed bad boy. I was the biggest stripper in Baltimore throughout the 90s.
like literally a stripper.
Yeah, male
Like
stripper.
dancing and taking your clothes off.
Taking my clothes off for money.
did you work at the Block?
No, actually, I've done some shows at the Block, though. They had, so for anyone that doesn't know, the Block is like a really seedy 2-block stretch of strip clubs. It's like the dirtiest strip clubs in Baltimore.
It's terrible.
And we actually did do a couple shows there, but they're all women. But we did 2 male reviews there in a basement bar. I think it was Foxy Lady, might have been called. But yeah, so my mom was 14. She got pregnant with me at 14 years old. Dropped out of school in the 8th grade to have me. Never, raised me with an 8th grade education. Never had my dad in the same state. Never paid child support. So it was hard for us, and I didn't have a strong male role model growing up. So I learned how to be a man from watching television and movies. So for me, what it meant to be a man was if you could get a lot of chicks, you're cool. So from the
There's
time
lots of men who still think that.
Yeah, totally. So
like most of the American population.
You're right. So when I was 15 years old, I came home, and there was a videotape laying on the coffee table that my mom and her friends must have rented. And I didn't know what it was. I walked over, I grabbed it, I put it in the VCR. Some of y'all know what that is.
We know. We're with you.
And all of a sudden on the television were strippers, male strippers. And I was like, I'm like, that's a thing? I didn't know it was a thing. So I thought instantly in my mind, for whatever reason, I thought that's what I want to be when I grow up. I wanted to be a male stripper. So from the time I was 15, that was my
Your
dream.
aspiration.
Yeah. And when I was 19, I started working for an entertainment agency in Baltimore. Eventually, I started working for all of them. I was in the phone book. I was like the top guy in Baltimore for a long time. I transitioned.
You had a dance background, or you love dancing, or was it about the chicks?
I was girl crazy. That was it. Yeah.
You had to be pretty good to be number one, right? You had to be doing something, right?
Did you have a stage name? Like,
what's funny is my stage name was Christian.
Okay, that's interesting.
No kidding.
Yeah, right. And I didn't choose it. So, but no. So, I lost my virginity when I was about 16 and became pretty sexually active throughout my teens and into my 20s. And when I was stripping, it was just crazy. Like a lot of women. I was very popular. I was making a lot of money. But I often say, like, I started to see the consequence from the lifestyle, specifically in my relationships, because I would have sex with a girl quickly, and one of two things would happen. Either I would immediately lose interest the moment I ejaculated, or we would continue sleeping together, and sometimes I'd drift into a relationship with one of these girls. But it would never be that great. It would always feel like something was missing, and I'd be looking over my shoulder at other women, wondering if I could be happier with them. Eventually, I'd look at porn, trying to fill this void. Eventually, I'd be cheating. but I'd be also still be stuck in the relationship with this person. So
I think that's a familiar story for
it
people.
is.
Yeah.
It is. So that was my first relationship. We had sex on the first date, spent 5 years together. And, you know, I wasn't in love. I was just kind of stuck. And
how long before in that specific relationship, how long before you wandered?
so basically, here's how it went. We were sleeping together. We slept together on the first date. I was 20 years old. I was just starting to strip, and I was becoming, you know, making some money. And had never really had any money, and becoming popular. And I didn't want a girlfriend, so I was giving her playing the non-committal game for as long as I could, while I was sleeping with other girls when she wasn't around. Basically, don't ask, don't tell. It's not my girlfriend, so I'm not cheating. You can play that game for so long, but you can't play it for that long, you know, because eventually they get to the point where they're like, I'm going to leave you, or they're going to start sleeping with somebody else, which you definitely don't want at that point. Because if you're having sex with them, you feel some sense of ownership. So I played that game probably for about 6 months, and I just knew I couldn't play it anymore. So it was either I had to commit or let her go, and I wasn't ready to let her go. So I committed. So I probably was faithful for, I don't know, a year or so after that, maybe, you know, trying really hard. At some point, though, still stripping. Yeah, of course, she's thinking she can change me. You know,
as many people enter relationships thinking.
Right. And then what's crazy is at some point I started to lose physical attraction for her, even like to the point where we would sleep together, but it wasn't that often. And a lot of times I felt like I was doing my duty as a boyfriend, but I was still wanting to have sex with all the other girls a lot, you know, trying not to. So I didn't understand any of what I'm going to tell you about back then, but you know, I think about 4 years into the relationship, I felt so smothered. I'd been smothered for a while. Like I felt like I just couldn't breathe. I worked up the courage to go home and tell her, I'm not sure if I'm in love with you. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done up until that point in my life. She started bawling the moment I said it. I started crying. But about a month later, she left. She met somebody else. She started dating somebody else. And to my surprise, it threw me into this deep depression. Because all of a sudden I was like, what did I do? I had to have her back. I was convinced it would be different this time. So I start calling her, you know, pursuing her and trying to get her to come back to me. Eventually she leaves the other guy. She comes back to me, and everything was beautiful for about 2 weeks. And then it went back to the way it started, the original dynamic where it felt like something was missing. I'm looking at other women. I'm looking at porn. Eventually I'm cheating again. I'm like, why did I do that? I was free. We date another year. Till I would go home one day and I tell her, I'm not sure if I'm in love with you. She starts crying. I start crying. She leaves me about a week or two later, starts dating somebody else. Guess what happened to me? I got depressed again. This time I was even more depressed. I was so depressed that I was like, I knew I was caught in something that I didn't have control over. I just didn't know what it was, but I was in so much pain. I didn't care. I was like, look, come back to me. I will get engaged to you. I'll quit stripping. Whatever you want, just come back to me. And fortunately she didn't. She got married to that guy. But again, after it was over, I was like, what in the hell was that? You know? So now around this time, I transitioned into a career nightclub promotion. So I start promoting all the clubs in Baltimore, take over the scene. Now I'm making more money. I'm even more popular. There's more women. And I'm like, I am not getting caught in that relationship trap again. Until my second girlfriend. Slept together early. Continued sleeping together, drifted into a relationship, felt like something was missing. Eventually I'm looking at porn, I'm cheating again. And I'm like maybe something's wrong with me. You know, maybe I'm just not like a one woman man, or maybe human beings aren't supposed to be monogamous. But like, those were the things I would think. All I knew was I could not make myself only have eyes for this girl, for both of these girls. And I wanted to. I really wanted to be faithful and love them. I loved them. I just wasn't in love. And I just was like, I wasn't sure what the problem was, but I just knew, like I said, I couldn't make myself only have eyes for them. Until March of 2000, I was in Cancun, Mexico. I was with a bunch of friends partying, spring break. And I woke up one day and I heard God's voice for the very first time. And he basically said, look, trust me, follow me. I have a plan for you. But he told me in so many words, he said, look, if you start doing relationships my way, you'll be able to find true love. Because I had never been in love. I was 27 at the time, never been in love. And honestly, it was radical, the realization, because I never even considered that the problem was how I started all my relationships. I thought something was just wrong with me. It wasn't that. It was how I started my relationships that was the problem. So from that moment, I decided that I was going to try to do it God's way. I was like, okay, I'm not going to have sex again until I get married. That was the plan. So I broke up with my girlfriend, 27 years old, and quit promoting, quit stripping, quit, doing drugs. And I just basically started to live in a like very straight and narrow life. And I assumed, honestly, I assumed that God was going to give me a wife pretty quickly. I thought it was going to happen in like a month or two. I didn't think it was going to be long. And I was behaving myself partially for selfish reasons too, because I didn't understand the concept of waiting. I just knew that that's what, basically the Bible said to do. And I was like, okay, if I don't sin long enough, he'll bring me this person and I'll get married and, it'll be great. So it turned into 6 years of abstinence. And it was a very lonely time in my life where I was like, I'm not a church guy. I'm not very religious. All I knew is Jesus is who he said he was. And now I'm trying to figure out how to live. And I would go to church on Sunday and I thought the people were nice, but they were kind of boring. And I just was like, so the other 6.5 days a week, I would just go home and I isolated a lot. I saw a lot of movies. But in that time, I started to understand some of the value in waiting. But basically what happened is after 6 years of sheltering myself, I didn't meet a girl. I didn't fall in love. God didn't bring me a wife. So I just kind of drifted back to the bar scene because I couldn't be alone anymore. And I wanted to have a social life again. So once I was in the bars, I started picking up my bad habits, broke my 6-year streak. And once I lost that badge of like pride, I just became very easy to make that mistake again. And I made a ton of mistakes in that area over the next couple of years until in 2011, I rededicated my life to God, committed myself to sexual purity again, recommitted myself to it. I'll tell you a story related to that because I think it's important. As I was dating a girl in 2011 that was an ex-stripper. She used to dance at the Gold Club. Maybe you know that place.
Know of it.
Sure, he's been there.
I didn't go to a lot of strip clubs. I went to the Block once and I thought it was disgusting, but
it was disgusting. I went there when I was like 16, I remember.
Yeah.
Wow.
Anyway, so me and her are having sex and I start to feel God's conviction, is, for lack of a better term. God's basically telling me, stop having sex with your girlfriend. I want more from you. I expect more from you. That's basically what I was feeling. And I was trying to pretend like I didn't hear him, but one day we were at her place. We were messing around. We were about to have sex. And I said, hold on a sec, let me put some music on. So I go over, I grab her remote control, and everything above 400 in Baltimore is music stations on Comcast.
Yeah.
So I grabbed the remote and I hit 411 because it was the fastest two buttons to hit were 11. So I was ready to get into it. So I hit 411 and all of a sudden gospel music comes on, right? And I'm like, oh shit, hold on a second. I grab the remote. I go down one station.
I go to a different station.
I go down one station and I swear the very next lyrics on the song, it was old school R&B and it said, temptation's going to get me every time. That was the very first words I heard. And I was like, oh God, I knew it was him. So I had a very honest conversation with him after that. And this is before I knew about the nonprofit or the book or any of this, all I know is God's telling me to stop having sex with my hot girlfriend. And we were in a bad relationship. Me and this girl dated for about 2 years. We had a pretty good sex life, terrible relationship. We broke up probably about 15 times over the course of 2 years.
I got one quick question because
I have a ton of questions, but I'm trying to let you finish.
I'm going to let you. We're going to definitely let you finish. But you skipped. You had 6 years up until 2011, right, or 2010, or whenever you.
2000 to 2006, I was completely abstinent, and then 2006 to 2011, I was just a madman.
Okay, 2000. So in that 6 years, though, when you say abstinent, you didn't there's no masturbation, there's no porn, there's nothing.
No. There was no sex, no oral, and no physical contact really with any females. I don't even think I kissed a girl. But no, I think the longest I went without jerking off was probably about 1.5 years.
Wow.
But no, there was,
Still a pretty long time.
yeah, that was a lot of determination at the time.
Yeah, it was. But you kicked the porn out too during that 6 years, yeah?
No, So
Okay.
like, I think I probably went 1.5 years when I first became a Christian, because I went from being like completely unaware of God to all of a sudden really aware that he was around all the time.
Okay.
So of course, then I'm just trying to like muscle it, be this good Christian just through sheer effort.
And
So
then
it was probably 1.5 years, but no, the porn, once God didn't, hurry up with the wife, it becomes, you go through, anything can trigger that porn. Like you get depressed, you get horny, you get, mad at God. You want to shake your fist at him, you go jerk off, like any of the, I've struggled with that over the last 20 years, any of those things. I mean, I'll go a month or two now without looking, but anything can trip it, and
so I wanted to make
because you're human.
I wanted to make one quick correction too. When I said that I didn't want to like, had anybody think that the Gold Club's some kind of a bad place or there's anything wrong with your old girlfriend or anything, because I was just trying to differentiate the block between other strip clubs. It was gross. The block was, other strip clubs are reputable and people in them are great. And I didn't want anybody to think I was saying all strip clubs are disgusting.
No offense to any girls that work at the block.
Yeah, exactly. No offense to anybody really, but just back then it was pretty seedy area.
Just because you don't want to go there doesn't make it a bad place.
In 2000, well, back then it was.
It's a bad place. I'll say
right. I'll take your guys' word for it.
Back to where you were, 2011. God tells you via the Comcast music channels to
hey,
stop having sex with your hot girlfriend.
I believe that God talks to us in all the ways we're willing to
absolutely.
listen.
But it's funny. I mean, you gotta.
It is great.
So anyway, so basically I have a kind of ominous conversation with God. I'm like, look, okay. I said, I'm going to try this your way again. And if I'm in love with her, I want you to convince me and I'll marry her. I said, but if I'm not in love with her, I want you to convince me of that and help us to break up, because obviously we can't do it ourselves. And I just, that's exactly what I said to him, just like I was talking to another person.
And during this time, all these years, how is God talking to you often, or it's like it comes in small hits? Like I'm so curious about how God talks to people, because I get it in, I'll go like a while and I feel like I can hear God. And then I'll go long stretches where I don't feel like I can hear anything.
Sure. Same for me.
Same for you.
Greedy people like that Walsh guy, they got 3 books worth of information out of him.
I think there's more than 3 now.
Oh. What's his last name? Walsh?
It's Neil Donald Walsh. He wrote Conversations with God.
Oh,
they're great books. If you haven't read them, I think they're great. I really like them. Anyway.
Cashed out on those conversations.
Yeah, totally.
No, when he first introduced himself, it was loud and clear, because it had to be. It would have been the only way to get my attention, because I had never heard it. But then after a while, it's like that whisper. And sometimes I don't even know, like, I'll feel like maybe God's telling me to do this, and I'll take a step in that direction and I'll realize it's him, or I'll realize it's not. Like sometimes you think, I think he's telling me to do this, and you take a step and he just doesn't meet you.
Yeah.
So it's the same for me as probably anybody else. But these couple moments were pretty clear. So I go to my girlfriend and I'm like, look, I said, I didn't say I'm not sure if we're in love, because I knew that would be hurtful. But I said, look, I don't know if we're built to last. We had broken up, like I said, 15 times. I said, but the way I think we're going to find out, I said, is we're going to stop having sex. I said, and if we become convinced we're in love, we'll get married. And then we can start having sex again. But if we become convinced that we're not in love, we should stop wasting each other's time right now. And we stopped. And within about 3 weeks, the clouds parted. And I could see clearly, and she could see clearly, and we broke up. And she got pregnant about a month later, and by her neighbor, and now she lives in Florida with a new baby. And I'm like, looking back, I'm like, whew, man, because at the time I couldn't tell. It felt like I might be in love. I wasn't sure. We were kind of getting along at the time really well, even though we'd broken up a bunch of times before that. And I see this happen to so many people, where they start having sex early and they drift into a relationship, or they drift into a marriage with the wrong person. And that's why the divorce rate's 50%. And of the other 50% that don't get divorced, I would say that the majority of them ain't that happy.
We say like 30 to 40% of those
if that.
are
So let's
still
say
not happy.
Yeah. So let's say let's say 30% of the 50% aren't happy. That means the odds of you being happily married are slim. If you do it like everybody else, which is having sex quickly, and then all of a sudden you're in something complicated, and now it's exactly what happened to me. There's all the biologies behind it. Oxytocin, if your listeners don't know what that
Dopamine.
means. Yeah,
I think the dopamine is really strong, and like
you become attached to people.
Love. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, dopamine's, it is a drug in and of itself, or it's the receptors that cocaine hits on and a lot of different drugs hit on. So
yeah, exactly.
When you're firing that off by being madly attracted to somebody or madly in love, whatever you want to call it, that can get addictive. So when that wears off, you're left with, oh, I guess I'm not in love with her.
I mean, think about it like this. Everybody's been in this position where you meet somebody of the opposite sex, and at first you meet them and you're like, ooh, your flesh is like, ooh, they're hot, right? But then after a couple weeks go by, you start going, yeah, they're good looking, but not for me. Everybody's been in that position probably 100 times. Yeah. At that point, you break through the surface, and now you can see the person inside. But if you're not committed to waiting and you have sex with that person before you break through the surface, now all of a sudden they're looking at their phone maybe one day, and you're like, who is she texting? You know, like, because you've had sex with her, so now you feel some like possession. There's a possessiveness over her or him, and now you're in something complicated, and that's where people get themselves in trouble.
So, but there's tons of different things at play there. Like some people, what you're talking about is jealousy issues, and jealousy issues can be related back to like insecurity. And so it's not always just the fact that you had sex with somebody that you're like immediately going to go down that road. But I have a question for you though, about your own story in that.
Well, hang on. Are we done? Because that was 2011, right?
So yeah. So basically, I'll wrap it up really quick. So
you don't have to go quick.
So I recommit myself
as long as you want.
I recommit myself to waiting, and I started meeting with a life coach around this time, got really clear about my purpose, and got a vision for my life. And I just kind of made the decision that I wasn't going to trade the things that I wanted most, which were the things on this vision statement, for things that I wanted right now anymore. So I took all that energy that I was wasting on failed relationships, chasing girls, started putting it back into myself, and started a nonprofit called CityFam, which we can talk about. Started writing a book about sex because I've really got I don't know, somewhere along the lines of being super promiscuous to being abstinent for 6 years and then going back and then coming back again. I just got it. And I made a video called 10 Reasons Not to Have Sex Before Marriage. Right as I was finishing the book, I posted it on YouTube and it went viral. It became the #1 video on YouTube on the subject for a while. I think it's got about 1.5 million views or something. And I think
it just got bumped by Sam's TEDx talk.
No, it didn't. Mine only has 20,000
We're
views.
just joking.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So anyway, I just used, like I said, I just became the best version of myself, harnessing that sexual energy and rechanneling it on things that were more productive. It wasn't easy at all, but I do feel like I don't think any human beings lived at more polar ends of the spectrum when it comes to sex as I have. No human being in the history of the world has, because I've had sex with hundreds of women, and then I had no sex for 15 of the last 20 years, 0. And that gives you a very unique perspective on the subject. So I see it very clearly, and I see where people get themselves, they ruin their whole lives because they're not committed to waiting. They don't find their purpose because they don't harness that sexual energy long enough. It's called sex transmutation. Great book called Think and Grow Rich. Napoleon Hill writes about it. When you dam it, when you hold it back, it's like damming a river. It'll build up and eventually it finds an outlet. And then you figure out what the fuck you're here for. And you start working on it. And then using the principle of waiting, you're able to choose a person not based on physical attraction only, which is very fleeting. Everybody knows the saying, show me the hottest girl in the world and I'll show you guys tired of fucking her. Because there's truth in it. When you lead with physical attraction, there is. Look, I've been there. I've dated.
No doubt.
It's true.
I've dated hot women that I just wanted to go to sleep with. I was like, I just want to sleep. I hope they don't bump, want to have sex because I don't feel. I didn't want to. I wanted to have sex with all the others, but not her.
That's how I feel most nights too.
She's not talking about me.
I'm talking about sexual elite, responsive desire versus spontaneous desire. But keep going, Rob.
No,
So-
I totally get what you're saying. There's before I met Sam, I broke up with several women that all your friends tell you are completely nuts. Why would you ever break up with her? It's like you have to have breakfast with her.
And, you know, I think a lot of people miss their purpose that way because they don't damn it, they don't harness it long enough to figure out. They don't pick the right person that can help them get there. They don't cultivate a community of people, which I've had to do. When I recommitted myself to waiting, I needed real friends like I needed air, because I didn't have shallow friends anymore because I wasn't going to the bars to hook up. So now all of a sudden I had to start finding friends and adding value to their life. And they now have added value to my life and helped me build up my nonprofit and my book and done some incredible stuff that I wouldn't have been able to do without their help. But I didn't have those kind of friends before. I had party friends.
Yep.
Because I was a partier and I wasn't committed to waiting. So when I see people that aren't committed to waiting, I'm like, I love that quote. I actually talked about it in a video today where it says, men live lives of quiet desperation. We live those lives of quiet desperation is because we feel that void, because we know we're not living up to our full potential. We know we're not doing what we're here for. And the way to do that, it all revolves around waiting to have sex. I know it sounds crazy. There's nothing will fuck your life up more than not being committed to waiting to have sex, because you'll get yourself into bad relationships. You won't figure out your purpose. And there's so many examples to it. And I know probably a lot of your listeners aren't Christians, but I'm going to say it anyway. If you look at Adam and Eve, Adam didn't get Eve right away. He got a job. God said, name the animals. That's what he had to do first. And I heard a sermon about it. It could have been 1,000 years before Eve came along. We don't know because it doesn't say. But what we do know is the very first words that Adam said when he saw Eve was, finally, ! So we know he waited some. That's the thing. We don't want to wait because we're lazy. I don't like it either. It sucks. But I'm telling you, when I meet my wife now and I get married, she's going to be the icing on this amazing cake that I've got right now. I've got an amazing cake. We might write another book. We might travel the world and speak. But if God would have gave me her 9 years ago, you know what we would have done together? Not a damn thing, because I had shit going on.
You would have slept together.
No, we would have slept together, and yeah, that's exactly what would have happened. But it wouldn't have been this great purpose that we would have lived out.
Right.
I had to figure out what my purpose was, and then start it. And now I'll be able to choose the right person that can come alongside me to help me accomplish my will for my life. And I think that I think that most people miss that deep sense of fulfillment because they're not willing to wait.
So let me ask you, I know you got questions. We got lots of them. And they're probably overlapping anyway, but so, because this podcast is inevitably, we talk a lot about couples and longer term relationships anyway. But what do you say to, because your life thus far has been, a culmination of lessons and then a culmination of purpose, right? Like they evolved into this purpose, and then you have this deep sense of self and this purpose, and you're attributing it all to waiting. But what happens if, you get married and you did wait, and you got married in your 20s, and, you're in your 30s and you're still feeling like, what was that quote that you said earlier about,
lives of quiet desperation?
Yeah. Not getting you everything done. You haven't really found your purpose yet. I mean, so waiting isn't an option for somebody that's happily married or in a relationship that they're content with. Do you know what I mean? So what do you say to those people?
Well, it is an option in that even biblically it says you're not supposed to deny your husband or your wife of sex unless to basically to fast for a time of prayer. So if you intentionally cut it off for a period of time and you're like, hey, look, let's not have sex for the month of July, and we're going to really be praying about maybe what God's wanting to do here. There's a principle there. You cannot eat. You cannot have sex. Fasting can be whatever, something that you enjoy that you're intentionally going to stop for a period of time to get God's attention, basically. So I think that if you're feeling that void or you don't know what your purpose is, yeah, you could certainly stop for a period of time. It's biblical.
So I'm first of all, I love your passion around this topic. I can tell you're really passionate about it, and I appreciate that.
Thanks.
I'm fascinated by the conclusion that you've come to about that it all has to do with sex, that it's all about committed to waiting for sex. Because I mean, as an example, Patty and I, we had sex pretty early on, like maybe our third date or something like that. And we're second. Who's counting?
We got married
anyway.
in the first 6 months we met.
Well, and it also depends on how you define sex. Like how do you define sex? Just out of curiosity.
I mean, I define it as penetration, but I've had people ask me, they're like, well, is it okay to have oral? And I'm like, look, it's risk reward. This soul tie thing is real. And I'll explain this way. I explain it is, if you are not being able to act in the way that you really want, then you run in the risk of having a soul tie. For example, let's say
hang on. What did you say? A soul tie?
A soul tie. That's just like what they call it in Christianese, is a soul tie. But let's just say a girl's giving you head. Okay. And you have it's a friends with benefits, let's say, or whatever. There's no, commitment, responsibility on your part at all. At some point though, you start to feel obligated. I've been there,
have sex with her?
No, not to have sex with her, but to commit. Let's say all of a sudden you want to date somebody else. Are you free to do that? Depends on how long this has been going on. Or maybe you want to date her friend. I've had sex with a ton of girls before where I was like up front. I'm like, look, I would tell them up front, I'm like, look, we shouldn't have sex because I'm not looking for anything. And they'd be like, no, it's okay. It's fine. They would be like, no problem at all. They would be good with it. We'd have sex. And then when I didn't want to have sex with them anymore, but I wanted to have sex with somebody else, you know what? I was the asshole. And I'm like, I thought we talked about this. Doesn't matter. It's genetic. It's women release oxytocin when you have sex. So automatically you're stuck on that person. When you orgasm, you release oxytocin, and it's like glue if you read up on it. Men don't release oxytocin when we have sex. Men release oxytocin when we commit. That's why a man can hit it and quit it. And this is what I tell women. When you have sex with a man before commitment, a real commitment, which is marriage, not a Facebook status, you're putting yourself in a very dangerous situation, because now you're going to be stuck on him and he's not going to be stuck on you. And you're going to be chasing him around for the commitment, which may or may not come, because guys are going to take it. If you're going to give me the sex and I ain't even got to tell you I commit, why would I say no? But now all of a sudden I might have to say yes to you out of guilt, because that's what happened. I've seen that happen to so many of my friends where they commit to their girlfriend because they say she deserves it. Because she's put up with so much of my shit, she deserves it. That's what I did. Both girlfriends. I played the non-committal game for as long as I could, and then I committed because I had to, because she deserved it. And then I wasted 5 years of the first girl's life and 2 years of the next girl's life. Versus me saying up front, hold on a second, could I be happier with someone else? You could date them. I'm not saying don't date. I'm saying before you sleep with that girl, ask yourself the question, can you be happier with someone else? Because if you can't say no, then don't sleep with her, because she's someone else's future wife.
But how do you know? So I feel like asking that question before you've been together for quite a while, although we got married after 6 months.
6 months is good.
Yeah. But
you're going to say sex. You don't need to have sex to be in love with someone.
Yeah. You don't need to have, I agree that you do not need to have sex to be in love with someone. So how is that?
You can have sex with someone and it will feel like love, and it won't really be love.
Well, it depends. It depends on.
I've had plenty of sex that did not feel like love at all.
Well, I'm not saying that that's impossible too. I'm just saying you can have sex and it could make it feel like it's real love and it not be love.
But I've had sex where maybe the oxytocin was also being released, but I felt no.
Well, I want to clear that up real quick too, because oxytocin gets released when you kiss. Also, they call it the cuddle drug, right?
It gets released in both partners.
So if you're even if you're not having sex, but you're going out on meaningful dates and making out and stuff, I mean, you can still release that oxytocin, and it can still make somebody want you to commit. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. But there's a good TED Talk called How Your Brain Falls in Love by a biologist named Dawn Masler, who endorsed my book, by the way. And she talks about the differences in when men and women, and she studied the brain, when they release oxytocin. And it's at different times, which again, if you look back at the Bible, men do it when we commit, women do it when they have sex. So if you wait until your wedding night, woman gives her body, man gives his last name, the two cleave together, which sounds a lot like oxytocin. when you look up the definition, and they become one flesh. And that cleaving preserves the family unit to help them get through all.
Cleaving
it doesn't. It doesn't.
Cleaving sounds more.
There are plenty of people that have waited to have sex before they got married, and they're still divorced.
Well, listen, there's plenty of people that hit the lotto too, but it's not a retirement strategy. What I'm saying is this: the rate of divorce for people that wait, you know what it is? 6%. 94% of the time they stay married. You know what it is for people that don't? 50. I mean, you can say I'm full of shit all day long. You don't have to agree with me, but
I actually don't.
I don't know that those stats are 100% accurate, because
people that marry as virgins have 6% divorce rate.
That's not, well, in Utah, that's not necessarily the case, just because, I mean, in the Mormon church, you're supposed to wait. You're supposed to get married as a virgin, and I know their divorce rate isn't anywhere near that
I'd
low.
like to see the study. I don't know.
Yeah.
I know what I researched for the book, and it was 6% for virgins.
Okay.
That's
But
interesting.
even still, like, I don't need numbers because I've lived this. So like.
But you haven't gotten married yet. So how do you know? How do you know that when you've waited, and then you marry this woman, and then I don't think you can tell if a marriage is going to work until you're 10 years in. I shit you not, because 7 years is the time when people start to feel uncomfortable in their marriages, because again, it's that same thing, like you said, the in love period. It's 2 years of an intense, that all those drugs are still running in you. So you have to wait at least 2 years after you've had sex before you swing out of that. Because that causes craziness in your head, and then now you're starting a family, and then that causes all kinds of chaos. In fact, the number one thing that people argue about is their children, how to raise their children.
Let's ask this: what would be the downside to waiting?
Well, what if you miss a partner that wanted to have sex and they were awesome and would have been great with you?
But because you wanted to wait till marriage, they left?
Yeah.
Well, I would say that they're not in love with you. You think someone will leave you that's in love with you because you won't have sex with them when all they have to do is marry you to have it?
We don't want somebody.
What about this? What about if you really? What if they really wanted to ask it again?
You think someone would leave you that's in love with you? They would leave you because you won't have sex with them when all they have to do is marry you to have it. If they're in love with you, all they got to do is marry you.
But are you sure the other person's in love?
That's what I'm saying. You said you could have missed out on someone great.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I want to marry the person that I'm in love with that's in love with me. Isn't that what I think most people want, right?
Yeah, but at what point are you going to realize that you're in love, and how long do I have to wait till you realize that you're in love if I'm in love? Like, it doesn't always happen at the same time.
Yeah, I would say that this is what I tell women especially, because I think the main thing for a woman to make the stance, the thing that stands in their way is fear. Because the culture that we live in, and they say, well, and this is where the devil, he's real, and he's going to always come against you with fear. That's his number one tactic. So he's going to say, nobody waits. No one's going to wait for you. You'll never find anybody. That's what he'll say. And this is what I would challenge a woman is the old me, when I was a scumbag, if a girl told me she was waiting, I would have been like, peace, I'm out. I would have left. And that girl would have done herself a big old favor because she would have avoided me. If a girl tells me she's waiting now, guess what I do? I lean in. I'm intrigued. I'm like, wow, there's a unicorn because I'm waiting. So guess what? If a girl tells me she's not waiting now, you know what I do? Peace, I'm out. I don't want that girl. So if you wait, you're going to attract this me versus the old me. Now, who would be a better husband?
But let me ask you. So I want to. That's a great question. And the old you would have been an absolute shit husband because the old you hadn't found your purpose. The old you hadn't done the work that you've done over the last 9 years, dude. You've done a ton of work on yourself, getting yourself, filling your own. I mean, because I think, would it be safe to say that you didn't love yourself at all in 2011?
I don't know. I don't even think I knew myself. I was probably, I was insecure. I was an insecure kid in a man's body, and I was using sex as a way to justify being a man, I guess, and
trying to fill your cup, right? Sometimes you use sex to totally. Try to fill yourself up and make yourself feel loved.
Totally.
You get caught up in that thing. I did the same shit in college and in my early years.
Patrick also has had hundreds of lovers.
In Park City, where you just, I don't know about hundreds.
Okay, 100.
But anyway, it's an insecurity point, really, because you're like, you think you need to put up numbers or conquest is a better word for it, in order to kind of have some self-worth or whatever. So you get past that, you've done all this work on yourself, and you've built yourself into this person that knows exactly what they want. I think you highly respect yourself and love yourself now. So you're absolutely going to make a much better partner now. I mean, there's no question in my mind. Now, I don't know that hearing your whole story, I attribute the whole thing to waiting. First, you have to recognize there's a problem, right? I mean, you've done other work on yourself besides just stopping to have sex, right?
That's definitely been a
Totally.
catalyst for you, for sure. Definitely a
Yeah.
catalyst. But again, like I'm fascinated by you like taking that little part and saying that's what's making all of this feel right, when you've done all this other work, right? Finding your purpose and all these other amazing things that you're doing, and it again, like attributing that to sex. And you know, tantra is all about sexual energy and holding it when you need to hold it and using it for other things and creating magic in the world with when you do actually come together with a partner and, you know, experiencing God and the oneness of God through sex. So I mean, I agree with much of that stuff, but it is curious to me that that's what's giving, like, that part is where your focus is as far as your development and what's amazing about you, and you know how that's the part that's going to make your next relationship better. And I would say maybe it has something to do with that, but it has more to do with who you are as a man. Part of that came from waiting.
Yeah.
But I think there's all these other things that have blossomed in you at that same time.
But I go back to the sex transmutation, because again, Think and Grow Rich, it says it's the strongest form of all human energy.
Yeah, I believe that.
And it can be rechanneled. So I don't think it's only that, but I think that when you rechannel it, it is the most powerful. It's the catalyst to do a lot of other things. You know, I liken it to, like, I don't know if you ever saw the movie Contact with Jodie Foster. Did you ever see that?
Yeah.
You remember the chair? They want to put the chair in the spacecraft and NASA or whoever. And she's like, no, it didn't call for a chair. There's a design. And they're like, no, we're going to put a chair and they want a seatbelt and all that. And then you kind of forget about the scene an hour later in the movie. And then she goes through the wormhole and it's like, shaking like a, right? And finally,
would have killed her if there was a chair.
And the seat snaps off. No, it snaps off and it's complete peace. And I'm like, for me, honestly, I'm not saying it's for everybody, but for me, sex was like that chair. It was causing so much fucking in my life. And when I got it out, everything was cool. Everything calmed out. I figured out my purpose. Now I can see with a clear set of eyes. Look, when I say I've done this, I'm surrounded by a lot of beautiful women through my church, through my nonprofit. And I get horny, I get lonely, and I look at them and I'm like, and before, this is what I would have done before. I would have called one of them up, called them over, you know, somebody I maybe saw some potential in, and we would have hung out and we would have had sex. And we were with some of them, one of two things would have happened. I would have stopped having sex with them. At that point, they're gone out of my life. No longer part of my organization helping me. Or we drift into a relationship and now I'm in something. But you know what I do now? I go, would you sign the marriage contract to have sex with that girl? I ask myself that now up front. And if I'm not relatively sure that I would, I'm like, no. Because I could see a really hot girl that I definitely would have slept with before. And I'm like, no, I know she's not what I want. I ain't got to take a Honda Accord for a test drive if I know I really want an Infinity. I don't have to.
But so
I know it's not what I
date
want.
though, right? You're still dating. Yeah. You're going on
Yeah.
dates?
Well, yeah, no, I will. I'm waiting. I've been on a few dates, but I'm a lot more selective now, I'll be honest, because again, when you know you're going all in on one, you don't go, before I evaluate it from this set of criteria. Is she hot? And is she not too crazy? That's all I really needed to know, because I wasn't looking for marriage.
So can I give you just a quick?
Wait, hang on. I want to ask you, what's your criteria now?
Now it's so much more than I'm getting one. I've committed myself to choosing one girl. That's the difference. Because look, men.
How much of a chance are you giving them? Because you don't get to know here's another thing. So because of the oxytocin and all those chemicals, the pillow talk is a real thing. So after you've had sex, it creates emotional intimacy because suddenly you're both open to each other, and now you're having conversations that you wouldn't have necessarily had you not done that. And I'm not saying that you can't get to those kinds of conversations when you haven't had sex, or that you're, or like, it's like drinking, right? You have a few drinks and people open up and they're more chatty and whatever. Same thing. You can get to that place without the drinking, but it takes so much more time. So when you're saying like, I look at someone and I'm like, that's probably not the one, or she's not the one. I feel like you have to take like time to really get to know somebody before you like, nope,
Yeah.
not you. Nope, not you. So if you're not dating, like, how does that work?
No, so this is where I'm different. I don't think you need to date people to figure out if they're worth taking that step with.
Fair enough.
Our organization, CityFam, is all about doing life together. It's about, being in close relationship and doing life together. So I look at, when we're friends, both of our feet are pointing this direction. We're both pointing forward. When you date, you do this. You point your feet at someone else. I've done this before where I've gone on a date with somebody kind of quick, and then we did this, and I decided I wanted to go back to pointing my feet that way. And guess what? There were some hurt feelings there. I don't want to put myself through that. What I can do is I can be around someone, befriend them, hang out with them a while, and see if there's anything in me telling me to take another step. Because what else am I going to base it on? Physical attraction? Or, okay, she's pretty and she's a Christian. Like, that's kind of a limited amount of information. I'd rather just be your friend for a while and see if there's anything else, anything stirring in me saying, hey, take another step here. Most people don't do it that way, but that's my strategy.
There's nothing wrong with that.
I like that strategy a lot.
There's absolutely nothing wrong with that at all. It's because the confusing part for me 5 minutes ago, and I think with Sam too, is that, well, I'm not dating. I might meet somebody in passing through whatever, but I know what I'm looking for, so I say no. But if you're taking the time to get to know somebody as a friend, it's better than dating, actually, I think. But
yeah, I think that's probably true.
So that's the only downside about getting 1 hour when we could probably talk for 3. How much time do we have?
Oh, I don't know.
Because I definitely want to give him time. I want to learn a little more about CityFam.
Yeah, we want to hear about your charities and everything.
Oh, we don't have much time. So let's talk about CityFam.
Sure. So, the idea for the organization really just kind of came about when it's not faith-based. I always like to throw that out there, but the idea did come about for me when I became a Christian, because like I said, I was having to make different choices, like I'm like, okay, don't want to really go to the bars and I'm not going to chase girls. So like, what do I do now? And again, Christians were pretty boring is what I found overall. So I was like, stayed in a lot and I isolated waiting for Mrs. Right. And when it didn't happen, I went back to the only place really I knew where people were having fun on the weekends, and that was the bars. And if the culture of a bar is not great, they're not committed to becoming the best version of themselves, let's say. Yeah. So
those aren't deep relationships.
Well, they are for the 5 minutes they're talking to you.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Until the next time, and they don't remember who you are.
Or the next person, and they make up a new version of themselves.
Yeah.
Exactly. You're 100% right. So once I was back in the bars, like I said, I made a bunch of bad decisions because I got caught up with the culture of what everybody else was doing for the most part. And then when I rededicated, I went through the same thing where I was renting Redbox movies every night for about a year straight. And
we watch a lot of movies too.
This is before Netflix, everyone.
Yeah, this is 2011. So I was like, this is crazy, man. Like, how do people make positive changes? Because it was such a god awful path that I'm like, there's got to be a better way. So because I was a promoter, I started organizing social events that we call now Fun Without Regret. And what the interesting thing was, I had friends that I always like to say they loved Jesus, but they were normal, because you have to throw that out there, right?
Yeah.
So I had a couple friends that loved Jesus, but were normal, and they were going through the exact same thing I was, where they were just bored out of their mind. So I started organizing social events, and they started coming. And then I started inviting my old friends that I used to party with, whose lives were starting to fall apart, to be honest, because all the bad decisions were now starting to compound. And I was trying to get them either to recovery or to come to church with me, because I knew they needed something. They needed some help, but they wouldn't come. But I could get them into a social environment. And when they came to the social environment and they met my friends that just so happened to be cool, that had their shit together, they started to get their shit together. And I was like, wow, this is interesting. So I started, at the time I was doing a lot of volunteering through my church. I was really liking the way it made me feel. And I thought they need to feel this too, but they're not going to come to the church coat drive. So I started organizing volunteer events, and they started coming, and I started to see the changes accelerate. And it ended up becoming the nonprofit called CityFam. And it's just, like, I feel like the church specifically, I look at the church because in general, most churches, I believe that they want to help people, but I don't think they go about it the right way. They invite people to come to this building, and then for the most part, they're like, see you next Sunday, good luck, which sucks, versus if you look at the early church, the first century church in Acts, they were not like that at all. They were together all the time. They were in each other's homes, eating together, hanging out, serving, just doing life together. And it says that the Lord added to their number daily those who were being saved. That's what the word says. It was just this different way of living that people were attracted to, this community feel, like they really loved each other. And I'm like, man, it ain't like that now, and if you look at this loneliness epidemic and this opioid epidemic that people are going through, people are fucking lonely. They're lonelier than they've ever been in their life. And it's so needed now.
And you throw in a mask and 6 feet apart.
Oh yeah, it's just making it worse, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to, fix that problem, which it's a big problem, but that's really what CityFam is about.
How long has CityFam been an active organization?
5 years.
So in 5 years, and we've never talked about this before, but I'm thinking there's going to be a number of how many people have met and then got married through CityFam.
I hope so. Hopefully I'm one of them.
So
I miss sex. People ask me all the time, they're like, you want to get married? I'm like, hell yeah, I want to have sex again.
So, but nobody you don't have any success stories through, or is,
oh yeah.
Yeah.
People have met, but the co-founder, actually, Billy Lofton, guy that started it with, he met his wife through CityFam at a social event. They're married. They just had a baby.
That's awesome.
A couple other people.
Okay. Cool.
That's cool.
Yeah.
What do your social events typically look like? Like, what are you guys doing?
I think a lot of them, because I started it and I'm still single, a lot of them revolve around things I like to do. So, I like going to bars. I mean, even when I was sober for 6.5 years, I'll have a beer occasionally now. But even when I was completely sober, I still like going to a bar if I'm with the right group of people, because, it was something to do. I don't like going to a bar when I was the one guy going this way, when everybody else is going that way. That sucks. But if I go with a group of people from CityFam, it's like you're with a bunch of like-minded people. And what's interesting is other people will see you guys, and it's a lifestyle that they can relate to. Yeah. So they'll be like, I believe that the bars are full of people that want to make positive changes, but they're like, what's the alternative? What am I going to do? Am I going to go to church, or am I going to go to AA and then sit in a coffee shop every freaking weekend? That's going to be my life? Really? No, thank you. So you have to give them something else that they can relate to. And that's what I think CityFam does a good job. So we do like sporting events. We've done amusement parks, camping trips. I mean, we try to keep it edgy. I always know personally.
Bubble soccer?
What is it?
Bubble soccer?
Patty wants to play bubble soccer so bad.
We play the bubble ball, the big balls, actually. But I always know if I'm rubbing the people in the church the wrong way, I know I'm doing it right. Because the event should be so edgy that I'm pissing the religious people off. And I feel that. So I feel like if I'm rubbing them the wrong way, then I know that I'm doing it right. So
that's I like that strategy. And you've got it right too. Bars are a whole different animal when you bring your own crowd to the bar.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a totally different experience. And I'm glad that you it's so funny. We also are always trying to create community wherever we are and go, and the people that we know, and it's hard. And so we go looking for those communities. We both, belong to masterminds, and we do a lot of work with another charity. And I'm proud that I'm really proud of you. You're like, I'm just going to create my own.
Yeah.
So how do they find you? So people in the Baltimore area, we have some friends in Baltimore. Like, how do people find you? And
they can just go to cityfam.com, and there's a button that says join the fam. It's free. You can get on our email list, and then you can even, I think one of the emails you get is there's a map that you can do a pin drop. You can put your name on there, and we're working tirelessly to scale the system so we can really. Sorry. Hold on a second. If I wanted to. And what do we do here? And I get horny sometimes.
Are we listening to your video right now?
I have no idea. No,
It kind of sounds like it's the recording of this.
it is. It's not me. I just closed all my windows to see what it is.
Oh.
We're still recording. That's weird. Is there a way to push playback while we have an editor who'll cut all this out?
Yeah, we do have an editor, but
Justin, you have to work.
I just closed everything down on my end.
whatever.
Oh wait, hold on. Hold on 1 second.
I can tell. I mean, if I know there's no chance, I'm not saying that I don't need to date.
I'm not sure where that's. Oh wait. I got it.
There's no chance of
I found it.
marrying this girl.
Sorry about
I'm not
that.
gonna put
It's
myself
okay.
I could screw
Shit
up.
happens.
Because what could happen is
There it is.
Perfect.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
Um,
Happens.
Yeah, so they can. Well, I think I was talking about the map. They can put they can do a pin drop and add their name to the map, and we're trying to do a good job of connecting people and really getting them into like you said, community and healthy relationships. The funny thing is so when the 10 Reasons video went viral, at the very end of it, I mentioned CityFam. I mentioned I started this nonprofit called CityFam. And we started having a bunch of people reach out that were either already waiting or they were like, hey, what you said makes sense. How do we start one of these city fams? So,
Oh, there you go.
and I really feel like the people that need it, the thing is when I wasn't waiting, I didn't need community like I did when I started waiting, because I would just go from relationship to relationship. Like I just have a girl over every Friday or Saturday. We'd watch a movie. We'd end up having sex most of the time. But when I stopped, I was like, okay, I'm not going to do this anymore. Sex is my kryptonite. Then all of a sudden, I was literally by myself. And that's when I was like, I need some friends, real friends. So that's when I cultivated it. So when I see people that are, on this path, abstaining, trying to find love before sex, I often like to say, they're the ones that need something like CityFam the most, because they're really starting to feel the pain of shit. What do I do tonight? There's such a separation between doing the right thing and having a good time, which sucks. It should not be that way. Like what, like when I was in the bars, I never had the problem of, there was always something to do, like there's plenty of fun with regret. Fun with regret is easy. It's all around us. Fun without regret, man, that's a whole different thing. You have to have, somebody has to plan that out. Somebody has to invite you to it, and it's a very intentional thing. And if you don't have a group of people that are planning fun without regrets, good luck, because you probably won't make it very long on your own.
Tell us real quick about your book.
Yeah, so Why Waiting Works. It's got over 85-star reviews on Amazon. Was a bestseller there. You can get a free copy at whywaitingworks.net. You just have to pay for shipping and handling, but then you get a bunch of free bonuses that come with it. And one of the bonuses is a small group curriculum, like a 8-week study that you can start to now get a group of friends together and just wrestle with the concepts. Because I get it. Look, I know it sounds extreme. I tell people all the time, I'm like, look, no sex before marriage. I'm like, come on, who thinks this sounds extreme? And if the people that are honest will go, yeah, it does. And I'm like, okay, I get it. And this is what I pose to people, and this is something maybe I should have mentioned sooner, is if I said to you, how about this, no sex before love? Most people will go, yeah, I understand that a little bit better. And I'm like, great, think about it like this. How do you know if you're in love? Because what I'm saying is you'll marry the person, because the Bible says the heart's deceitful above all things. So it tells me that my heart will trick me into believing something that's not true in order for me to give my body what it wants. So if I was dating a girl and I said, hey, I'm in love with you, Susie, and she says, I love you too, Rob, and I say, great, let's have sex, and she says, sure, let's just go to the justice of the peace real quick, get married, then I'd be like testing my heart to see if it's really telling me the truth, because I know a divorce is going to be painful. So now I'm going to see if my heart's lying to me before getting myself in that complicated thing. That is the point. That's what I believe why God gave us marriage, because he didn't want us to drift into a relationship with the wrong person and waste our lives on that wrong person, or end up going through a messy divorce. And if you've ever talked to somebody that's been through a divorce, a lot of times they're like, I don't ever want to get married again because it's too painful. They go through that pain, that ripping away from that person. and they get so beat up by it that they're like, they don't want to get married again. They think marriage is the problem. I'm like, it ain't marriage. You did it in the wrong order. And now you're blaming marriage. It ain't that. You have to do it in the right order. So
Cool.
anyway, I'm sorry. I could talk about this stuff all day, but yes.
No, you're very passionate.
You're totally fine. And I would like to propose either another podcast. We can do it on ours. You do a podcast too, yeah?
Yeah.
Or we'll come on yours, either one. But
Yeah.
I want to title it The Weight Debate.
Yeah. I love it.
Because I got a bunch of points I wanted to make. I mean, especially when I think about like mine and Sam's relationship and how it unfolded. And I just get your take on it.
You might have beat the odds. You might have just beat the odds, but doesn't. That's why I challenge. I mean, challenge people to say, "Hey, look, it doesn't mean there's no guarantees on either side." You're right.
Yeah.
I know people that waited that it didn't work out, but you can put the odds significantly in your favor, is what I say.
Yeah, no problem. I still just want to get more into the, I don't know, just into the intricacies of some of the points. Do you know what I mean? I think it'd be fun. And we don't even have to publish it. It'd just be fun to have the conversation. But
yeah, no, I like it. I like it. Let's get it on the calendar.
okay.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
Cool.
The weight debate. I think
Weight
my
debate.
fans would like it.
Yeah.
I'm sure they would. I think ours probably would too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because I mean, at the end, you made a ton of good points. And I wanted to, you're our guest, so we like to let our guests talk on this podcast. But there's a bunch of points I wanted to talk more about.
Yeah.
So.
And I still have a lot more questions.
I love it when people disagree because it like squeezes the juice out of me a lot of times.
Yeah.
When people agree, it's kind of a lame conversation. But when they disagree is usually when you get the good stuff come out.
Cool.
Probably be good.
All right. Let's do Rob part 2.
Rob do.
Rob Deuce. The weight debate. You know what's so funny, Rob, is just to finish this off, my mother has never really given me any advice about anything. Like, she's just not an advice giver. But the one piece of advice that she gave both my sister and I, she said, never marry anyone you have not had sex with girls.
And that we're going to put out there as the teaser for the weight debate.
So I was like,
Mom.
yeah, I wonder what my mom would have to say.
Yeah, her mom wanted you to walk around the car, kick the tires, feel the tailpipe, put your hands under the hood.
Oh,
Anyway.
man. The old
All right,
banana
man.
tailpipe trick.
Hey.
You remember that Beverly Hills Cop?
Yeah.
The old banana and the tailpipe trick.
Yep. Potato works even better.
Rob, thank you so much for being on our podcast, and we can't wait till the weight debate.
Yeah, I'm gonna send you an email this afternoon, and we'll get it on the calendar.
Fantastic.
All right. Sounds good,
What's
buddy.
the name of your podcast?
I called it Kowalski analysis. Did you ever see Did you ever see Madagascar, the little penguins?
Yeah.
Everybody kept commenting on the 10 Reasons video, Kowalski analysis, right? Because I guess it's so I just called it Kowalski analysis.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
All right, man. Thanks
All
again
right.
for being with us. It's been a great conversation.
I appreciate you having me on. It's been my pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks,
Till
sir.
next time.
Have a great day.
Bye.